Children's Bureau. Child Welfare Evaluation Virtual Summit Series. Children's Bureau. The Child Welfare Evaluation Virtual Summit Series was made possible by the Children's Bureau. Replicate and Adapt, Apply and Improve, Part 4 of 5.
Welcome to the fourth video in our 5-part series.
If you're meeting us for the first time, we recommend clicking the pause button and viewing our earlier episodes. If you're returning, welcome back.
The framework to design, test, spread, and sustain effective child welfare practice includes 5 sequential phases that together form a complete process for building evidence and spreading effective practice in child welfare. The framework begins with identify and explore to help us pinpoint and understand a problem, and then select the best solutions based on our theory of change. After completing these foundational steps, the next phase of the framework depends on the intervention selected, its evidence base, and whether it's already being practiced in a child welfare agency or system. If a child welfare agency has plans to spread or scale up an evidence-supported intervention that has shown the potential to effectively address a problem, the next phase is replicate and adapt.
Like if a state decided that all of its community-based mental health centers should offer a particular type of evidence-supported, trauma-focused therapy for child victims of abuse.
That's right. It's important to remember that jumping ahead to this phase before an intervention has been rigorously evaluated and demonstrated to work during compare and learn increases the chance that the untested program or policy might not improve our intended outcomes.
Or worse, it could result in unintended or even harmful effects. The trick to replicating and spreading an evidence-supported intervention is that sometimes it also needs to be adapted or modified to fit a particular context or population. This process can be complicated.
Floating balloons lift a box.
And making those decisions often requires the involvement of many different stakeholders, including the designers of the intervention, agency decision makers, and program staff and members of the community.
When attempting to replicate or adapt an intervention, our goal is to achieve the same or even better outcomes for children and families, despite differences between the practitioners, agencies, and systems delivering the intervention, and despite any differences between our target population and the population with whom the intervention was previously proven effective.
We know that to be effective, the core components of an intervention need to be delivered as intended, but aspects of the program may also need to be changed before our agency can make the program more relevant for particular populations.
You're talking about maintaining fidelity and considering when to make cultural or contextual adaptations.
Yes.
A cartoon woman gestures to graphics.
My agency has become increasingly concerned about youth with behavior problems. We've only begun looking for possible evidence-supported interventions. So let's imagine that a couple of weeks from now, we discover a group therapy approach that has been rigorously tested and reduces symptoms associated with trauma exposure, as well as aggressive and hostile behaviors. And let's say we learn that the teens who participated in this group therapy program appear very similar to many of the youth served by our child welfare system.
You're saying that these two groups of hypothetical youth share important things in common, like age, gender, race, and ethnicity, and maybe household income, family structure, or community characteristics.
Yes, and they have experienced similar histories of abuse and challenging behavior problems. Our agency might decide that the group therapy program could be an excellent candidate for replication with youth served by child welfare.
Sure, that makes sense.
But what if the group therapy program had only been delivered and tested in juvenile detention centers?
Well, you might need to consider whether potential differences in delinquency and time in detention were important. But if you still chose to use the intervention, you'd probably have to adapt the program so that it could be delivered by your agency.
The box lands on a juvenile detention center.
We'd need to figure out whether the group therapy sessions needed to be adapted before our agency or partnering service providers could deliver them. And if so, how would it work if we moved the model out of a tightly controlled setting where youth live together to a setting where youth are dispersed in different homes? Where would the group therapy sessions take place, and who would lead the sessions? Would the sessions be structured the same way, occur with the same frequency, and be the same length of time? How would any program content need to change that might have been specific to activities and goal setting while in juvenile detention? And how might improved behavior in detention translate to improved behavior at home or at school? We would definitely need to collaborate with program experts to preserve core components while making necessary adaptations and carefully consider how these changes might affect outcomes.
It sounds like some of these possible changes would also take into account differences between the target populations. That makes me think of how interventions often need to be adapted for different cultural groups.
Absolutely.
I'm familiar with some work that has been done recently to adapt evidence-supported prevention programs and mental health treatments for American Indian and Alaska Native communities. One program in particular required adaptation of a proven curriculum that prevents and treats behavioral and emotional problems for young children. For it to be effective for American Indian children and their caregivers, the program's content needed to acknowledge the history and experiences of Native families and to reflect American Indian traditions, beliefs, and values. Without changing how some of the parenting practices were taught and understood, some of the methods would not have been culturally acceptable or effective. Integrating modern psychotherapy and traditional Indian culture to adapt an intervention that would improve outcomes for Native children and families was a challenging process.
I can imagine that would be a difficult balance to strike.
Despite these challenges, the core components of the intervention were preserved, and further rigorous testing confirmed that the adapted program was effective for the new community.
We need to mention just how important it is to capture information about fidelity to core components. Without data about fidelity, it's hard to say with any confidence that we've replicated or adapted what has been proven to work. Fidelity data can also help us to determine which strategies and factors, like practitioner training and coaching and aspects of organizational capacity, support successful implementation. We want effective interventions to be spread with the greatest possible impact.
And as an evidence-supported intervention is received by an increasing number of children and families, fidelity data allows us to better understand differences in effects for certain groups too. We can examine whether differences in the effectiveness are due to how well the intervention was delivered, or whether differences matter between groups who received it.
Information about these differences can help our practitioners become even more skilled when delivering the core components of interventions. After all, the purpose of Replicate and Adapt is to integrate evidence-supported interventions with practitioner expertise while taking into consideration client and community characteristics, culture, and preferences.
You're reminding me of something we covered in the first video. I remember you saying that the goal of the overall framework is to promote evidence-based practice.
A cartoon man points to a graphic.
Evidence-based practice is at the heart of the framework, and the Replicate and Adapt phase is all about putting evidence-supported interventions into practice in the real world. Once an evidence-supported intervention has been fully implemented by an agency and has become part of routine practice, it's time to move on to apply and improve.
Hey, there's our friend Shar again.
Hi, Shar.
I heard that you could use a little help.
We asked Shar to join us for discussion of the final phase in the framework, Apply and Improve, because she is a director whose agency is doing exciting work in this area.
Before Shar tells us about the work her agency has done, let me explain a bit about this phase. During Apply and Improve, the agency hopes to enhance its decision-making and performance. This means ensuring that an intervention continues to be delivered as intended and that improvements and outcomes are sustained over time. Agency continuous quality improvement processes and staff often play a critical role in this phase because they monitor routine practice.
That makes sense. Shar, can you tell us about your agency's experience with this phase?
A brown-haired woman.
Sure. In our agency, the Divisions of Child Welfare Services and Alcohol and Drug Services have been collaborating to provide treatment and support to parents involved with the child welfare system who suffer from substance abuse disorders. Using our information system and linking data from our two divisions, we've been monitoring service delivery and outcomes. We also performed a targeted review of child welfare case records and quarterly program reports when some of our data raised concerns. The first couple of counties to implement the evidence-supported treatment model were really successful. Parents stayed clean and sober, and their children remained safely at home without further referrals to our agency. Unfortunately, other offices didn't have the same levels of success.
What do you think accounted for these differences?
Well, thankfully, we required that each program site record data about staff training and attendance in its program reports. After conducting additional telephone interviews with local directors and staff, we learned that training in the lower-performing counties was not offered or completed as frequently as it had been in the first locations. Perhaps due to higher rates of staff turnover and fewer available training sessions, classes were frequently taken out of sequence and attendance in some counties was poor. We speculated that staff who didn't complete training as intended didn't properly implement the model. As a result, treatment and outcomes for parents across the state were inconsistent. With this in mind, agency leadership used targeted strategies to improve communication about the program. We implemented one statewide training program, and we collected basic information about how closely the sites followed the core components of the treatment model. In other words, we tracked fidelity to ensure that the intervention was delivered consistently at all of the sites. After we made these improvements, we continued to monitor the relationship between training completion, program fidelity, and outcomes, and we're doing better.
That's a really good example because it illustrates how this phase focuses on continuous improvement agency-wide. You examine how the intervention, as well as its related policies and practices, were implemented across the organization by comparing data between counties. This included training practices, fidelity assessment, and outcome monitoring. You also took action to promote widespread understanding and consistent communication about the intervention as a path toward improved outcomes. And you're following up to see whether they've worked.
Shar, what would have happened if your agency hadn't found differences in training and implementation between the counties?
I guess we would have needed to revisit the treatment model and investigate more closely why it was working for some parents and not others. We might have had to change something about the model or consider alternatives.
That's exactly right, and may have led you to another phase in the framework.
We are out of time, but join us in the next and final video, where we'll walk through all the phases of the framework using a single child welfare policy intervention as an example. We'll tie it all together.
Join us for Part 5. You can find the publication, A Framework to Design, Test, Spread, and Sustain Effective Practice in Child Welfare on the Children's Bureau website. Special thanks. A list of names follows, including Diane DePanfilis, Renda Dion, Ruth Hubner, and Mark Testa. This video was created by Paltech Inc., Child Welfare Evaluation Virtual Summit Series.